VM.
कृपया ध्यान दीजिए, the language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen yaar, don't be so conservative. Alright, before I bring on a wonderful, a real, very important person in the world of Indian journalism, I have to just mention, came back from Kolkata just the night before, and horrible situation. I had to travel budget airlines because of all the pain and suffering there is in the world. I want to experience it myself, so I did that. But I found something very interesting. In Kolkata airport, they don't let you take the deodorant, obviously the air purifiers and all these things on because they're dangerous and you can cause a terrorist threat with it, which is fine because they always confiscate mine. But once you enter the airport and pass security check, you can buy them and then take them on the plane. So I'm just pointing out to the authorities that I didn't understand that at all. You take mine from before security check, but after that I can buy it from the shop that's just outside and then I can take it on the plane in any case.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, host of the Empowering Series podcast on the IVM network. I happen to be a peak performance coach and leadership coach by profession, and I'm here to share with you productivity tools, life-altering techniques, and real-life hacks to help you achieve your maximum potential in everything you do, your relationships, professions, careers. So tune in every Monday to unleash your inner power. Be safe, be well, be empowered.
So that's something that a strong investigative journalist like Sagarika Ghosh, who doesn't want to be called that, but wants to be called Sagarika.
Yes. Sagarika is fine.
I think people want to just impress you with their Bengaliness and get the Bengali pronunciation right. I thought I'm really bad. I don't even find out what the real one is. I just put the shirt together and pretend and hope, I wing it.
No, it's just Sagarika. That's perfect.
No, but I was told actually by my guy, Silvery, who will come on a little later. My guy sounds horrible. But he said you have to call her Sagarika. She gets upset.
Sagarika is the Bengali. No, please, I don't get upset. No.
You sound like an Indian politician now. We'll just keep saying your name. Listen, lots to talk about. We want to talk about the books actually, and of course your life and career, and not Indian politics, which I know is something very close to your heart, but I've lost interest. COVID and Indian politics, I don't believe they exist.
I know. It's a bit difficult staying interested in these Netajis, actually.
Yeah, we fired them. We fired everybody in politics and the entire COVID culture, which has driven me mad, which I'll get to as well.
Yeah.
Sagarika?
Yes, perfect.
What's the pet name? All Bengalis.
No, I can't tell you. There's no way I'm telling you that. There is
I'm not doing the show.
Way I'm telling you that. No, please, it is so bad. It is so bad. No, it's really bad. You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
I'll do my own sharam ki baat hai moment. Okay, my mother's glasses, which I have to wear now because I broke mine.
No, mine is like really the worst pet name ever.
No,
I can't tell you.
People are going to Google right now and find out and send it on our live chat.
Oh my
Just trust
God.
me. Please, everybody Google and find out what is Sagarika's pet name. It's a popular term of endearment amongst Bengali families, and she's not very happy with it for some reason.
I'm not happy with it for a very good reason.
Why?
Okay, please. I'll tell you. This is my meltdown moment. I'm coming out with it. This is my let it all hang out moment. It's the name of the former Chief Minister of Bihar.
Oh,
name him.
Yes.
Horror story. I told you it's a horror story. I told you it was horrible. Don't even go there. It's nothing to do with me. I'm trying to disavow it. I don't want it. I hate it. I'm not. I know no allusions to the former chief minister. So every time I see him, I have this horrible sense of empathy and just kind of intense.
That's me.
Can you imagine this intense sort of identification?
Oh my God.
It's bad.
No, but isn't two things. First, do I have permission to call you Lalu?
No.
Oh,
please.
That's so unfair.
The horrible thing is it's actually, it leaked to my college friends. So all my college friends call me that. And I cannot live it down because they post on Facebook and Twitter. And no.
aren't school kids and college kids the most evil?
They are.
When they catch anything like that, they will never let it go till your dying day.
They don't.
Ouch.
Very
Horrible.
sad. Gosh, what a confession. This is like a big moment for me.
This is beautiful. And in fact, it's brought us closer immediately.
I had that sense. Yeah, I'm getting that strong sense.
Because I was called so many things like idiot, fool, get out, don't come back, those kind of phrases, but nothing like Lalu. French. French for a sophisticated lady like yourself.
Like I sometimes think, could I make it Lola, or could I make it Leela, or something like that. But no, it is that other thing.
Lola is nice. Lola is very effeminate. Yes. But Lalu.
No. Yeah.
One man, it's like you can't be called Sachin after we had a Sachin Tendulkar, because it's just too strong.
It is.
Okay, let's now this is you. Enough of this Mr. Yadav. Yes. As much as you like him, he's not too well. I hope he's okay.
I hope so.
Yeah. I've got such a bad tongue. I apologize immediately. I hope he's okay, really. Let's start from the beginning. Let's see the journey of Sagarika. Tell us about school, college, how you got into journalism, how you became a Rhodes Scholar, broke all world records, and then we get to the books as well.
No, school was Loreto Convent, and then...
Hot chicks. I should never say that. Never say that. So respect. This is the Me Too generation.
And then DPS RK Puram, where I have to say I was 2 batches junior to guess. Oh, Raghuram Rajan. Yes. I'm that old.
Did he call you Lalu?
No, we didn't know each other. Because, DPS RK Puram had something like 16 sections. No, I think it went up to I actually. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, like 11A, 11B, 11C, it went up to I. So the humanities were I, and the sciences were A, B, C. So I think he was in science, and which was segregated, and there were these.
What was he doing in science?
He was science. He was doing physics.
He's a failed scientist.
Yeah. No. I mean, you have to take the 3 streams, right? Humanities, commerce, science. So he was science,
right?
And I was humanities. So we never had anything to do with each other. I don't remember him at all. He has no clue that I was there. But of course, we met at a school meeting, and I was like, "Is that Raghuram Rajan?" And they said, "Yeah, he was in DPS." I was like, "Oh my God."
No, but this is quite amazing.
Amazing. So, and then St. Stephen's, where I was there from 83 to 86, where I had lots and lots of very illustrious peers. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I loved St. Stephen's. It was a really great experience. It was the first time that you were on campus and traveling by youth specials and having the dhaba, the mince cutlets and the nimbu pani, and you lit your cigarette through that rope. Oops, I used to smoke then. Can't say that. Oh, I mean, no. Alt delete, Control Alt delete. I hope nobody.
You want to discuss?
No. I don't want to be. I don't want to be a non-Bharatiya Nari. And so, there used to be this rope, and you used to light. Other people used to light cigarettes with that.
Like Raghuram Rajan?
No, he wasn't there.
He was in the other place. Right?
He was somewhere else. By then, he was somewhere else. So St. Stephen's, and then I applied for the Rhodes, and I on just the off chance because I had good grades. I was a Magoo, actually.
Hey, come on, now I'm sure now you're being fair enough. You want to be modest, fair enough. But you obviously were very good.
I was good at studies. Yeah, I was good at studies.
Otherwise, if you lie, then I call you Lalu.
No.
So we have to be honest.
No, I was very good at studies. But I was good at studies through really hard labor. There are those brilliant people who swan in and don't work, and who max every exam. I was seriously slogging in the front seat, taking notes, mugging, secretly mugging, saying I'm not working, but secretly mugging, keep saying, the cool thing, I know studying, but...
Let's discuss this point for a second. Yeah. I think a lot of people put down mugging and muggers. It's only memory. Memory is very important. Discipline, hard work.
It's important.
Hello, don't throw it away. I know you're trying to dumb it down and act like you're not good at what you did, but this is lost on this generation. Where everything's available at a touch of a button.
Yeah, no. I was sitting in the front row taking notes and working very hard and working my whatever off.
That you can say after drug mention and lighting this and lighting that. Using the word ass is the least of the crimes here. Come on.
I know.
Oh, but that's highly interesting.
So I was doing that, and yeah.
You're the hardworking girl who came good in a sense.
Yeah.
I see a lot of urban growing up and all that around me. This is not a sexist remark, but really we've discussed this.
Yeah.
A lot of girls
very
who were doing well in the co-ed schools and all, who were topping all the time.
Nothing.
They topped all the way to college, and then they just disappeared.
Then they disappeared. I think that's really unfortunate. What's the point then of studying so hard and passing all those exams and doing so well and getting the medals? And I think that's a waste of time, and that's probably why I wasted. It's unfair to yourself, I think. And that's why I think I work and I try and I'm still working. I'm still out there. I'm still putting my stuff out, as it were, because I do think that I think that there has to be something that you need to give back if you've received so much. So I think it's unfair that women sort of make short shrift of their talents. If they're so good. If they're so, my son has this thing. He says that so many girls, because he's a medic and he's sat the All India medical exam, and he said, lots of girls got in and all the girls topped and the girls were topping the classes, and then just finish their MBBS and get married. And then he says, why did they take the seat?
That's a very, again, without being sexist, that's a hugely fair point.
It is a fair point. It is a fair point. I mean, why put yourself through all that, if you're not going to make the most of it?
No, and you deny someone who would really live and die by the medical profession.
Yes, and
terrible phrase, but
who wants to get the seat? Okay. Anyway, so then that was, then I applied for the Rhodes, which was just the off chance, because in those days, the Rhodes was actually given to basketball playing 6 foot tall men. So, the men who were going to be leaders and they were going to go and become captains of industry and head of ITC and IAS officers and, the hearty, shake you by the hand kind of guy. So that was the sort of profile of the Rhodes at the time. It's very different now, thank God.
Were you like the only, firstly, how many? There are very few, right?
In my time, there were very few women. Very few women. I think that I was perhaps one of the few. Most Rhodes scholars were all men. So anyway, I got it for some, I don't know how. Maybe I impressed them with my hardworking, conscientious.
I think it was the pet name. They've never had a Lalu. They were like, wow, we're going to have this name on our merit list, Rhodes Scholar.
They didn't know. They didn't know. I hope they didn't know.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, but
this whole show has been hijacked by one thing, and all your lovely achievements, as good as they are,
I knew
will be taking a second place.
That's why I didn't want to tell you. That's why I didn't want to tell you. It's just so bad. It's such a downer, and this.
It's not. And it makes you so endearing. Yeah. I think people with silly pet names, it just become fun. It breaks down. It breaks the ice at a cocktail party if you had a silly name.
Can you imagine? I mean, just imagine even the flight of Bengali men, because they have names like Ronojoy and Bishwajit, but then the pet name is like Tutu. Oh, cuckoo. And they're like, oh my God, the world conquering Ronojoy is actually Tublu.
Oh boy, that's beautiful.
No,
it's good.
That pet name is bad.
If all Indian males were humiliated in this way, they'd be better for it.
Maybe.
I feel a lot of them have their head in the sky for no reason.
I know.
Unless, of course, you have alpha females like my own family. Won't discuss that.
Yes.
Because they may hear the show. Let's get. So you got the Rhodes. Tell me a little bit about the Rhodes. The Rhodes culture. We have no idea.
So the Rhodes is a scholarship given by. It's endowed by Sir Cecil Rhodes, who was in fact Afrikaner industrialist who endowed this huge amount of money for scholarships. It was actually intended for white men to shoulder the white man's burden, go out there, civilize the natives. Whatever, all of that.
Seems they failed.
They failed. So they got a brown woman, which is very good. I'm very happy. And now, the Rhodes in India, I'm very happy to say, is extremely democratized. Lots and lots of women get it. I was on the Rhodes board for several years. And in 1 year, actually, we sent all 6 scholarships were all women. So that's amazing. And also, the background of the Rhodes, which was always public school educated and Mayo College or Doon School and then St. Stephen's and then...
Not to put them down.
But a lot of the elite, who were also high achievers and played sport and all that. So they had a kind of monopoly on the scholarship. But the gin drinkers, as it was, this is my first novel. My first novel. So they monopolized it in a sense, but it's completely changed now. So it was designed, and there are lots of Rhodes scholars. There are, about at least I think 20 from America, Australia. So the Commonwealth basically. So it's very prestigious. You get a lot of money. You live in great style in Oxford, and Oxford for me was just incredible. I mean, I loved literally every minute.
And you don't mean the vaccine?
No, No. I mean the university, of course. And it was just, gilded youth and all that, so punting on the chow well, and then on...
What?
Yeah. You go punting on the river.
Yeah, Angrezi nahi aati hai. What the hell is that?
Punting is the sort of little boat that you row down on the river. And then on May morning, you jump from the Magdalen Tower into the chow well.
It's skinny dipping,
which is a pretty high tower. So you sing madrigals and all. It was great fun. I mean, it's like,
So that's a side of Sagarika nobody knows. They see you as this, hardcore journalist who fights the fight for the oppressed and for the liberal left and this and that.
No, not left, liberal.
The liberal, not necessarily, because it gets confused.
But that's a confusion that I'm not...
If you're not right, where are you, for example? People don't answer that.
Yeah, but it's liberal is sort of, I would say, more about liberty.
Also, your Bengali antecedents being what they are, you want to very clearly say you're not left. So I understand that.
The left is not into personal liberty, actually. Left is all big brother, toe the line.
Yeah. The collective
Siberia,
one liberty for all
Siberia,
of us.
Solzhenitsyn, all of that. So, no, Oxford was fabulous. Really like Ruritania, Have you read The Prisoner of Zenda?
Of course.
Oh, I love that book. And so Oxford reminded me of Ruritania, of a kind of, or that sort of fantasy land of...
What's his name? Rupert.
Rupert of Henzau.
Right? It's coming back to me slowly. Wow, you know your books, that's for sure.
And Rudolf Rassendel, remember?
Correct.
So that was
that make-believe world.
Yeah, that make-believe world. Anyway, it's a lovely experience. I mean, I would recommend, if any young person out there, if you can get a scholarship to go to Oxford, please go. You will love it. Love every minute of it.
Why journalism then? You're enjoying your life, having such a great time.
I was having a great time, yeah. So, no, journalism, because, actually while I was, how the adage is that you come to the West to discover the East and you go to the West. You go to the West to discover the East and you come to the East to discover the West.
Well, searching for meaning.
I mean, I think you get a unique perspective on your own country when you're abroad, And Oxford is kind of immersion into a completely different world. Because
that's a great...
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. That's a great tourism, really.
It is, no? Yeah.
The identity becomes stronger when you search for it from away.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why so many NRIs are so sort of virulent about their identity and...
you can use stronger words. Some other time.
Another topic altogether. But, that...
Maybe in Ruritania, where we can speak. Yeah.
I was the queen of Ruritania. Anyway, but the thing is that honestly, you really get a unique perspective on your country. And I was also actually studying Indian history there, modern history, because, paradoxically, so many documents are there in libraries. I saw the wonderful Babarnama. You saw
the original?
No, a copy, but it's there, and you can see, you see the Bhagavad Gita, which was commissioned in the time of Aurangzeb. He commissioned many Bhagavad Gitas, and it's so interesting. You have Bhagavad Gita and you have Bismillah Rahman Rahim in the same page. It's actually wonderful. And, anyway, apart from that, the modern history documents, so much is available. And I was actually quite obsessed with India. So I was enjoying life in Ruritania, but obsessing with India at the same time, So I was in this intensely charged identity crisis. And it was actually very exciting to have this crisis because I was jostling, who am I? What language am I speaking? And, and in those days, nobody knew anything about India. They said, you're elephants and snake charmers. And I was like, no, I'm not that. No, I'm Delhi. Actually, no, I speak English. So I was like in this state where I was explaining, I write in my novel. I wrote a novel, actually, because I was so charged by this whole experience about this constant identity crisis and torture. I mean, actually, it was beautiful and glorious, but intellectually, it was torture. I mean, it was a nice torture, good torture, happy torture, but torture. So because you're explaining and you're not explaining and you're kind of wallowing in this identity problem. And so it was so charged. I wrote this thing. I became a kind of...
Sagarika, you're scaring me because I'm empathizing so much with you.
You know what I'm saying?
So we just have a fun conversation. Now my sensitive side is getting touched here.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I can exactly think of what you're saying when you're abroad.
So I mean,
absolutely. Who am I?
What am I? What am I saying? Yeah. Everything. And you know
it's
so much.
Worse than Erik Erikson's nightmare.
Yeah. And my mother is steeped in the British royal family. And I was like so embarrassed about that. Why does she keep asking me about Queen Princess Diana when everybody there was sort of as if I was coming from some never land of snakes and elephants. And so I just crawled out of the tropical rainforest.
We have that.
So we have that as well. But, so it's so complicated and confusing. So anyway, so I became like a traveling circus for my country, explaining, performing, putting on little shows, doing little dramas. So I was like this one-woman pantomime. And this experience made me write the novel as well.
and finding out who you are.
Yes, and finding out who you are. Yeah. And then, intense, you have emotional relationships as well. I mean, with friends, not anything else.
No, stop.
No. But,
I'm like a therapist. You just tell us everything. It's all fine. Yeah.
No, I mean, even the friendships you have, because again, the British are amazing friends. I'm still in touch with them. So many of my friends there. But again, you have to explain, you have to tell them, they don't know, they want to know, they really like you, but they don't know where you're coming from. So it's kind of very interesting. So it was a lovely experience for me. And I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I learned, I think, how to think. The Oxford education system is fabulous. It's one-on-one. It's you and your tutor are there.
If I lead the country, I will make Oxford education compulsory for all. I have a dream.
Yes,
I won't have a dream. I'll stop my dreams. Listen, we'll run out of time, but it's lovely. We've created Oxford. We've created that early part.
Yes.
It's important to know that you had all that going.
Yes.
But then you had this thirst for journalism and for the written word.
So I became obsessed with India. I'm totally in love with the written word. I love reading. I love writing. And I came back to India and I joined the Times of India. Actually, I met the Times of India editor in Oxford, Mr. Dilip Padgaonkar. I'm sure you know him. And he had said, legend. And he had said, why don't you come and apply when you come finish? And so I applied. I got in. I had an interview with Mr. Sameer Jain, who said, what do you want to write in Times of India? So I went into my whole tortured sort of identity crisis and everything. So I think they were by then so terrified to say, lelo. So, I mean,
I can see that.
Unloading my, existential angst.
Okay, you got the job. Just shut up.
Yeah, pretty much like that. So, and then, I came back to India and it was actually a fascinating time because it was 1991. Were you born then or you were, right?
I'll call you Lalo for that twice.
Okay, no. So,
I'm 71 born. I'm a Bangladeshi boy. God. Born in that war. Yeah.
Like that. So 91 was, Mandal Commission.
Of course. Who can forget that?
All of that. So it was very exciting to report all that. So
and the world changed. You had the Berlin Wall falling, South Africa.
1989.
1991 period, the Gulf War.
Very exciting time.
As a journalist, it would be riches beyond control.
And then, I'd come back from Oxford, from Ruritania. And I came back to the Times of India, which was by, and in
which rhymes, by the way.
Not Ruritania.
That could be your bio, huh? From Ruritania to Times of India. The story of Sagar. Lalu, forward by Lalu Prasad Yadav. No.
That is not nice at all.
Stay on focus. My apologies.
No, but then, there was this cut and paste gang. You had to descend into the basement, because in those days, when you joined the Times of India, I joined as an assistant editor, they put you through the mill, go and make pages and do the dirty work and stuff. So you had to go down to the basement and there was this cut and paste department. In those days, we made pages on bromide. They were typefaced and you put them on bromide and they came out. And there was this evil cut and paste gang, these 40 large unionized Times of India workers, the cut and paste department, they went for lunch. I remember at 12 in midnight, they would take out their pawas, little bottles of rum, and they would say, Abhi, hum lunch pe ja rahe, because they're very unionized. There were these workers who were in the cut and paste and printing department, And so I was there shivering from Ruritania thinking, I say, okay, lunch. What time is it? And, that kind of thing. But it was really like getting into hot water, but it was fabulous.
Would you join them for a quickie with the rum?
No. But then, it was very exciting to do all the reporting that I got to do, because I was sent out quite a lot. I went to Ayodhya, Babri Masjid after that.
Oh, yeah, 91, we forgot that.
92 after that. It was pretty bad. Wow. So all of that. And then I joined Outlook magazine with the best boss in the whole world.
Vinod Mehta?
Yes. But a lot of this Me Too things happening and all that. I mean, I must say, as far as I was concerned, I had extremely supportive male bosses. I mean, whether it was Mr. Padgaonkar or whether it was Mr. Vinod Mehta. I mean, Vinod was hilarious.
You got the two clean men in the business. I got the two
clean, yeah. And they were eccentric, they were mad, they were completely. Vinod used to come to our newsroom and say, "Who's got a defamation notice? Anybody? Any legal notice? Huh? Any legal notice?" And we would say no. So, but he gave me a lot of life lessons. And because then while I was working in Outlook, I also got married. I had kids, all of that. And he told me, he said, so you've had kids also? I said, yeah. So he said, well, then you'll just have to manage. And that, that line, you just have to manage, was actually quite a life lesson for me. You just have to manage. If you've got...
Now that's equality.
Yeah, I think so.
As far as I'm concerned. Because you have kids, you can't work. Equality is like, it's not my business. Come to work. Yeah. That's it.
So, one story, the old British ICS officers in the 1940s were coming back to the Simla Academy, the British Civil Service Academy in Simla. And they were going to come and have a function there and reminisce about their time in India. So he sent me to cover the story. He said, why don't you go and meet these ICS officers? You've got Oxford connection, British connection. You go and you meet them and you do the story. And at that stage, I had my little daughter who was literally a month old, and I was nursing her. And he said, you just take her. So it was me, my little kid, my little infant kid, and the maid who was with me. And I was doing the story and all the time. And it was amazing. But, everybody was so sympathetic. And these British, very stiff upper lip ICS officers, would see this woman journalist covering their story, not just a woman journalist, a woman journalist with baby. So, but they were very, how interesting. I was like, yes, sir, don't mind. So, it was a great experience for me to do that story, to cover that story with my child. And, but people have always been very supportive. I've taken my kids to all kinds of places. And
why not?
Now, why not?
I think that's right.
Why not?
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, I should take them to office. They used to sit in a corner. I mean, it was fine. It was fine.
It's the right attitude.
Yeah.
When people call up and say, I have this thing and that thing, I'm saying, just bring a problem to the place.
Indian women do that, right? They put the kid on they put the kid in the back.
Oh, Native American, yes,
of
course.
Indian, in the chai workers, for example, women often put their babies in the back or carry their babies.
And carry on with physical work.
Yeah, carry on with physical work. How many manual laborers you've seen with kids running around on the sand heap?
Never. I'm no fan of the Indian male. You got the wrong guy. Yeah, but I hate that.
It is bad, but Indian women do it. They take their babies everywhere, and I think that's fine. But I
think it's part
having said that, I think workplaces should be much more sensitive to working mothers. And I think there should be creches and all.
Why should you have to take months off? We just have to make it easy for you to manage.
Yes. Just have a place where you can bring the kid.
In my office, if anyone says I'm pregnant, I say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I do care, but I don't care. That's just part of your life. Just carry on.
Just carry on.
We have to be strong. Sagarika, you and me together. We have to forge a good friendship over this and make sure India follows.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, listen. I'm sorry, but we've got 5 minutes before the break to talk about 3 books.
3 books.
The one that I want to talk about the most, actually, I know you've done the one about the strong, most powerful Prime Minister, which is the recent one. Why I'm a Liberal manifesto. I think a lot has been spoken about that. But let's go back to Gin Drinkers. You mentioned it. It was very interesting that you wrote about caste politics from out of, literally coming out of left field.
Yeah, I contrasted the brown woman in Oxford, because the central character is a woman who's just come back from Oxford, and the experience of a Dalit man in India. So, and I looked at discrimination in that way. That in India, you don't see who is of which caste. But the discrimination is so subtle that, there are certain places where the Dalit Bahujan Samaj communities cannot enter. That there are certain sectors in the economy where the Bahujan Samaj they're not barred. There's no law, but it's generations of.
They are barred. It's like a convention.
It's like conventions. There are doors that do not open.
I think you mentioned cocktail parties and the literati.
Yeah.
How many
Dalit Bahujan would you find there? In the same way, I found in Oxford, however many friends I had, however much I loved being there, there were doors that would never open for me.
What do you say?
I mean, there were doors that are closed. I mean, there's certain, British society is very hierarchical and very, there are castes.
Just ask Meghan.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't, and and there's race as well as class, and it's very complicated. It's very subtle. You don't see it. You think on the outside, you think, what's the problem? Everybody can go anywhere. But
egalitarian Britain.
Yeah, but you can't. You can't actually.
Yeah.
So there are these subtle sort of shades of discrimination that exist. Those are.
I think you almost drew a parallel with. I hate to say this. How can I say this without sounding? The black question in America, where everybody tries to say, I have a black friend.
Yeah.
Similarly, here the hoity-toity would say, I have some association with someone from a lower caste. So it's almost like you need to do that to show that you're actually a person of humanity.
But there are certain doors that will never open for you. And certain areas where certain areas that you can't go. And that's true of the
even today, right? Even today, in terms of the classes, the caste mixing, it doesn't really happen.
It doesn't really happen. And where are the sort of there is so much of this hidden, invisible discrimination. And so I did this, and then I also sort of wrote about how I was, as a brown English-speaking metropolitan girl in Oxford. I mean, the kind of baggage we all carry, right? Cyrus? I mean, we listen to English music. We grew up on English
culture. English music.
We all love
it.
We're so Brit in so many ways. Yeah. And yet, of course, we're not. So there's this whole problem there. And
because we spit. Spitting is not very British.
Yeah. And, I recently saw Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie Mercury, and I saw his...
Of course.
And I just saw that, and I saw the character and how, for all his Britishness and for all his attempts to be this more British...
He was still a Parsi boy from Zanzibar.
Yeah, and he was called Paki, and he was, he was never accepted, and so became outlandish as a kind of... outlandishness became a kind of shelter, kind of refuge.
To get accepted, he had to be more wilder and crazier.
Exactly. And sort of wildness was his armor, was his shield. So I could really kind of, in a way, identify, not that I have any thing in common with.
And then he writes that beautiful line to end the song, nothing really matters.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of saw that, that sort of crazy personality as a sort of refuge for the torment that he must have felt within.
Were you like that? We have to take a break in a minute, but were you like that at all?
I can understand that.
Did you try to find something else about yourself?
I can understand. There was a friend I had in Oxford who I've written about in the book, in the Gin Drinkers. Poor thing, she's not spoken to me about after that at all. She's cut off relations because it was obviously her. She became this wild personality. Her hair became all ring. She came as one little demure little thing. Demure little thing from I think she was from the south, and she was from Tamil Nadu, in fact. And her hair became all ringlets. She started wearing crazy clothes. She, her nails were all crazy, and she adopted this very strange accent, and she was this wild, glittering bird of paradise, And I realized that basically she became that as a protection. Against,
no strong identity. That's the problem with a lot of us. Then you have to fake the identity just to be...
and you have to be that uber identity.
I've been doing this for years, Sagarika. No biggie.
To get accepted as this wild bird of paradise, place where you can't belong,
Yeah, so, it's a bit. I mean, this is also. I have to take a break, but this is also why we do that accents with the foreigners.
The
fact that we don't have a strong identity, and then
so
we put on the accent.
We imitate.
The Aussie, and then we become Australian and American.
It's so sad. It's so sad. These are burdens of colonialism.
Yeah, well, I don't mind it. We'll take a break. And the present circumstances, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back with Silvery right now in a second.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week. Siet, thank you so much for sticking with us. On the Paisa Vaisa podcast, Anupam was joined by Sujata Alawat, who spoke about women's credit behavior and about improving credit scores for better financial health. Gauri Devi Dayal was joined by Barkha Dutt on This Round is on Me. She shared her thoughts on present-day media and journalism and some of her experiences from the days of her reporting. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talked about how meditation is like getting engrossed and absorbed into an activity where you are free of other thoughts and focus on just one thing. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi were joined by Supriya and Priyanka Joshi for an honest and heartfelt conversation about life as a woman in the 2020s. On the Filter Coffee podcast this week, Karthik invited Bala Srinivas, who has been an active mentor in the startup scene in India, and they discuss its various aspects from funding to government support. Our traveling professor Cesar talks about this academic document called Statement of Purpose and helps us understand its concept and shares and some tips on how to draft it well. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Follow me at Instagram and Twitter on Bored Brocha. I'm so bored, I need your help. I need your love. I need your touch. Okay, just follow me. And literally in a second, here he is. Silvery, we got 15 minutes. Sagrika's in edit, and I have 3 men standing here in pants. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Chalo, let's go. Let's get to the AMAs, ma'am. The first one comes in from Vineet Karmakar. He says, Hi, Cyrus and guest. He says, I am not at all up to date with politics in India. I don't really understand the political scenario in the country. How can someone like me feel like I'm voting for the right person when every election cycle comes around? How do you determine a politician's character with minimal time put in? Is it possible?
What kind of question is that? He wants somebody else to refer? I mean, then it's not like what's the best film to watch? It's very difficult. Sagrika, you're the hard-nosed journalist. You answer.
Well, I think you've got to judge them you have to listen to all politicians and then judge whoever you like most or who you think is making the most sense. So, what I would tell this young person is steer clear of politicians, any politician of any party who's talking to you about religion, caste, region, and appealing to religion and caste. Just steer clear of those kind of politicians. Steer clear of religion.
If they're strong supporters of IPL teams, that's a good point.
Yeah. If they're IPL, if they have some other interests.
You got to identify with the politician at some level. Sometimes they're just so distant from you that I can understand the guy if he says he has no interest in politics. Where does he start? If he just has this whole show has been identification, by the way, identity crisis. It transforms here as well. Who is this guy who will lead you? He's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah, he's got nothing to do with you, and you have no empathy. There's no connect. So I think opt for the less bad. They're all bad. Opt for the person who's least bad.
But literally, politics corrupts. I have a lot of empathy for them. I think some of them come in trying.
Yeah.
They have an idealistic state in their mind about how they want to save humanity, and then they give up. And they just say, forget this. This is what I'm going to do.
I think politicians over the years have it's really like, I guess it's like journalists as well. The degeneration is so sad. It is so tragic. When I joined politics, there were actually politicians who were great. You could learn from them. You could debate them. You had access to them. My namesake is a crazy guy, the former chief minister of Bihar. But Lalu Prasad Yadav is a great, he's a wonderful politician, and you can see him in action. And for me as a political journalist, the drama of leadership and how people are led and the whole unfolding of democracy and how people participate, all that is very exciting. But
he's a BA, LLB.
He is, and he's smart. And
he's an astute politician, but we think he's not because of the rustic side.
Which is an act. As we're saying, we're talking about identities, and that's also...
But even if it's not an act, why can't one and the other go together? You can be a rustic politician with a very erudite mind as well.
But then the thing is that today, it's just, it's tabula rasa. There's just so tabula rasa, as in nothing.
It's what did you have to show off, Sagrika? Because I called you Lalu? Is that it?
Sorry. So I would say just go for the least bad option. I don't know.
All right. Cynical but true.
Yeah.
Silvery, next one.
I often feel that by default, I feel that you shouldn't trust politicians by default and then let them earn your trust. Because it's just the nature of, I think, the job.
That's a nice way of putting it, Silvery. You're saying you start with disrespect and say now you've been bad for generations. Now you earn the respect slowly.
What I also feel is that, and that's why I wrote this book, Why I'm a Liberal, because liberal, the word comes from liberty, is that politicians should not be telling you what to wear, what to eat, what to sing, what to dance, policing your movies, policing your books, telling you how to get married, telling you who to marry. That is not the job of the politicians or of any government, which is why I think we need a movement of Indians.
Can they tell you to boycott Rihanna?
Boycott Rihanna. Can you imagine? The Ministry of External Affairs takes on the Republic of Rihanna. The Ministry of External Affairs. And so, I think we need huge citizens pushback when it comes to politicians trying to get into your home and telling you what to do. They can't tell you what to eat, what to drink, who to love, what to read, what to write. They cannot.
I'm okay with who to love, huh? As long as it's love.
Yeah, but
who to hate is a fear. Who to hate is much more dangerous.
No,
who to love is fine.
But they can't tell you who to love, right? They can't tell you can't love according to certain religion. They just can't tell.
Well, you can if it's not a democracy, but let's go on to the next question.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not very clear.
I know.
All right. Next one comes in from Sonia Badri. She says, "Hi, Cyrus and guest. What do you think about the current election campaigns being run in Kolkata? Does BJP hold the upper hand after the Mamta fall, or do you think Mamta could crush them with using the?
I can tell you, Sagrika, of course, has land and property there. So
I know. I don't have land and property.
But I've just come back, few hours back from call.
No, disclaimer. No.
It's like Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. It's a split decision at the moment. It's really much closer than we thought, and it's going to be a bloody contest. I can tell you that.
It is, and politics in Bengal is very, very violent.
And unlike us in Mumbai, they're very conscious of politics. So you talk to anyone in the rickshawala or to the guy in the lobby in the hotel, to some hoity-toity guests, and they all got very strong opinions.
Yeah.
And I must say, it's a dogfight. It's going to be a big one.
It's a big one because, look at the way the BJP is mobilized. I mean, you've got about 20 cabinet ministers there, the prime minister is there, the home minister is there, the defense minister is there, chief ministers are there. So they're really putting everything into this fight. So it's going to be big.
And the TMC is also,
he's a tough politician.
Injured on the foot. Injured on the foot in mysterious circumstances. The lady is holding her own. And I believe
she's a tough politician.
The female of the species is always more ferocious. This is a known fact.
And particularly the Bengali,
not stronger, but more ferocious.
And the Bengali women, Bengali women,
we are women in Bengal.
This is, why we say.
Let's go for more metaphors. The lion in the den, the tiger.
Right. Jai Kali, Kalkatte Wali.
So there you go. That's the answer, Silvery. Don't watch the IPL during April. You've got this to watch. Yeah. Far closer contest. Yeah.
All right, the next one comes in from just two more. We have two short ones. This one comes in from Diksha Puri. She says, Cyrus and dear guest, do you think it's fine to find a story hilarious even though it's a serious issue going on right now? For instance, the Bangalore woman Zomato delivery guy fiasco. I know one person might have been injured and the other person might lose their job and end up in jail if they are found guilty. All this said and done, somehow I still find it really funny. Am I being sadistic about this? And also, I want to hear what you guys have to say about the whole situation. What do you think is right?
I just think humor is funnier when there's seeds of truth in it. So unfortunately, there's no malice intended, I suppose. What can you do? If it's funny, it's funny.
It is funny.
Why are you ashamed to laugh? You didn't mean to upset or insult the lady who went through that, or the delivery guy or whatever. So I think that's the point. Funny is funny. It's a perspective. You're seeing it from a corner and this is what you think. I wouldn't take it personally. I think...
I don't approve of violence in any way, but I do think that, if you find it funny, that's your point of view, I guess.
No, I think violence should be allowed when you have bikers on, the footpath or on the pedestrian crossing and all that, or going to the one-ways. We should be allowed to kill them. I mean, slice them like tomatoes, nothing less. So little violence here and there, nakabandis. I think all the police should be put in a big jeep and driven off out of the state for putting a nakabandi for no reason. At midnight, outside the airport, to look at your bloody biker's helmet. For God's sake, we've spent 5 hours on a flight trying to come home.
No, I'm Mahatma Gandhi. I'm non-violent.
No, I'm okay with a little violence. What else is there to do? Life is so boring. Little pulling should be allowed. Please.
Violence of words, violence of thought. Violence of thought, violence of
in
words.
In Britannia, in Lalu land, surely there's a country somewhere where we can have this. All right.
Violence in
the second part of the question was also, what do you guys think about the whole incident? I believe the delivery guy is telling the truth and the woman is lying. You guys, it might be a little premature right now to.
How the hell?
I'm not au fait with this incident actually, so I don't know. I mean, I know that there was a scuffle, but I'm not sure.
Okay, fair. No,
but the point is, how can you ever know? This is when a husband and wife fight, and people say, he's so bad and all, or she's so bad, and they just take sides. I'm like, how the hell do you know? You weren't there. You can't just decide because you hear one perspective and say, okay, that's it. I'm going to, you lean closer to one person for whatever reason. So I think this is, as Daniel who's come to judgment and a son of 4 generations of lawyers, I refuse to give a decision here.
But I'll tell you what I find really impressive though. I think the Zomato owner is being great.
Not shying away.
Yeah, I think he's being fabulous. They're giving full legal aid to the delivery boy. They're paying his salary. They have suspended him, but they're paying his salary. They're also looking after the legal expenses of the woman. They're also doing a big reach out to her. They're taking care of both sides. So I think they're using
the publicity. From a Machiavellian point of view, they're using the publicity for their own interests in a really great way.
But I think the Zomato owner is just an amazing person, because he took a stand.
You're getting some free deliveries today.
I'm getting free. No, remember he took a stand on the customer who objected to the religion of the delivery boy. Took a stand saying we're not going to change this guy. Our personnel we're with them. We stand by them. So I think he's, hats off to him. We need more startups like this.
Yeah.
The people like this should rule India, I think.
Zomato-stan. There you go.
Oh, why not? Yeah, that is a very good idea.
So, those nutcases on the bikes will drive us mad. They are the perpetrators I spoke about. They're just going sideways while you're driving.
The attitude of these young startups, I was just going to call them upstarts. No, but the young startups, fabulous. Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah.
You're right. So, ma'am, you're saying that everything can have a positive spin, even a negative kind of a scandal.
I think the Zomato founder, I'm so admiring of him.
Well,
I think he's amazing, but for the life of me at this moment, I can't remember his name. So, do you remember his name?
It'll flash on the screen.
It'll flash on the screen. But he's incredible. He's just incredible.
So the courage of, what you're saying is we have such poor character now around the world that the courage of conviction, when it's displayed, while it's actually only what he should have done. If you look at it from that point of view.
Exactly.
For us now, we're applauding and saying, wow.
Because we don't see it. We don't see it from the politicians. We don't see it from the people who call themselves our leaders. But we see it from these young businessmen, and I think that's fabulous,
His name is Dipinder Goyal.
Dipinder Goyal. I vote for... Tell the guy who's looking for...
Vote for Dipinder.
Vote for Dipinder.
Zomato party. 20%
off. You'd vote for them.
Their manifesto is 20% off.
Wouldn't you vote for them? I would vote for them.
Well, there are lots of people I would vote for, but none of them are standing for elections. Including Rihanna.
I would.
All right.
Are we done?
Last question.
Last one, quickly. Sorry.
This one comes in from Girish Raje. He says, "Dear Cyrus and guest, hope you're doing well. Cyrus, I love it when you have journalists and other professionals from news media on the show. Lately, however, sadly, there's no escaping the fact that during the pandemic, we have seen a lot of the ugly side of journalism too. Why does it seem like our news houses are scared of the current government so much? And why do they seem to have embraced fake news so much?"
You're asking Sagarika Ghosh this question. I mean, as a lawyer, I'm telling you, there's no point. You can read her articles. What is she supposed to say? She can't defend the fraternity.
No, but I will say that I think what's happening to journalism right now is pathetic. I'm so disappointed in so many of my peers and my colleagues who are literally crawling. I actually was someone who, Cyrus knows this, I had to actually leave a job because my independence was questioned. And so there were many of us at that stage who had to give up our job at that where we were employed. This was CNN, IBN. I was forced to resign. Many others resigned. And we all resigned because our independence was being questioned. And now I think what's happening is mainstream media is the slave of the government. And we are crawling, in front of the government. I think that's very sad. But, I think there are structural reasons why this is. I've explained it all in my book, Why I'm a Liberal. It's because the government is so powerful. Look at Bollywood. Look at how many Bollywood celebrities
for the first time
are literally bending over backwards to please the government.
If you cut to the 70s and 80s, you never see them
not this way. Not in this way.
Look at
business. Yeah, look at businessmen. Look at judges. Look at cricketers. Look at all celebrities. Look at civil servants. Look at, so many people are just crawling before the power of the government. And that's because government is too powerful in India. We need to push back the politicians, push back this big power that politicians have over us.
May I say, I had a birthday party last year during COVID and I did not invite a single politician.
Yeah, don't invite politicians. I keep telling people who invite me for lit fests, And because I've written a biography of Indira Gandhi, and my next book is also a biography of a prime minister. But so they keep putting me with politicians, and I keep asking these LitFests, why do you invite politicians? Why should politicians talk about literature?
They're trying to encourage them. They want them to read. They just want to encourage them to read.
Because they need the permission so the goons don't come and bash you up. So, so politicians are doing literature.
So politicians provide security.
They provide security. You've got a politician there, the goons won't come.
Vote for Dipinder.
Yeah, so politicians are literally everywhere. And, for example, if you go to a music function, that also is sponsored by a politician. If you go to a theatre function, that also will be inaugurated by a politician. It's just politicians. So I think we need to get rid of this obsession.
Outsource the extra politicians and make income for the country. How about that? Yeah. And remove bikers on pavements. That's what we've learned today. And identity crisis that you'll suffer abroad will never heal.
Never heal.
In the case of your friend who doesn't talk to you.
She's still like that, by the way. She's still a bird of paradise living in Sweden. But, it's a bit sad. I mean, I've deconstructed her completely, but she's not taking my advice and acting on it. Anyway, but the whole point is that I think that, this thing of being self-aware and this torment that we feel about identity, in many ways is it's very creatively stimulating. It's very creatively challenging, and you can channel it.
You use it constructively.
I use it constructively.
Not everybody does.
But, if you channel it, it can actually become a spur for creativity and for exploration and for all kinds of adventures you can have with this kind of energy going on,
Wow. Listen, Lalu, this has been a treat as usual.
I
wish we come back again and we'll discuss topics which are not necessarily just to do with you.
Can I just plug my book shamelessly?
Please plug your book.
So this is Indira. India's most powerful prime minister. This is the biography. It's being adapted for screen, by the way. So it's becoming a Netflix.
Who's playing Indira Gandhi?
I can't tell you that, but it's being done by Ronnie Screwvala. He's doing the...
Can I play Feroz Gandhi? Can I play somebody? Can I be the Darban who opens the door? I want to be the Darban.
Why would you want to play Feroz?
Damn it.
Okay. No, anyway, so that's one. And then my other book is Why I'm a Liberal. So I really wish people would read this, because it's very important that we know that, that it's important that we guard our freedoms. We have to be able to be free to eat, read, write, drink, love, marry, worship, whatever we want. The politicians should not be telling us any of this. So
but they can tell us, but you shouldn't follow.
They can't use state power to make us follow.
I think it's too late, Sagarika, but thank you for trying. For effort, A plus. All right. Okay, guys, sorry, I'm going to rush now because I've got 4 sweaty men standing next to me, which is my future. And Sagarika, all the best to you.
Okay, thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pop in again anytime,
yes,
please.
Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, catch us on any of the podcasting apps, please. We beg you, we need you. Send us your questions on Twitter on Cyrus Says In, or you can email us, even if you're not female, on whatcyrussays@gmail.com.
From uncensored and unfiltered chats with the who's who of the entertainment industry, I, Siddharth Kannan, bring you a very heartcake chat show called Candid Kannan. Tune in every Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shinetro.
And me, Farhad.
On our show, Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.